jumping back in as part of a short series that I'm doing today. But so some of these videos you'll notice they're a little bit long form, and they're not as long as they would be because I have to stagger them because the platform will only upload like 10 minutes at a time when I upload directly to the platform. That might actually be better because no one's trying to click on a video that long. So maybe it's actually better to break them up in segments. But it's somewhat, it changes the delivery because you can't keep the line of thought going. But it actually might be more interesting and actually valuable to be segmented. But and then I lay like a background of where I'm coming from in the thought process. So sometimes it'll save me a long time to just make my point, but it's actually creating content in that form. But I'm also trying to lay things out to show where I'm coming from. So I had mentioned that you have people like Naomi Klein, who has talked about externalities of our dealings, no less than some of the atrocities around the world that have proliferated from largely centers in the West to go abroad to other places in the West and the East, to be felt and paid for by usually marginalized and vulnerable people. Some people actually starving. Like you imagine the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, I think that some of us in the West, as brutal as that was, I was talking to a man yesterday. I said in another video that I had a celebration yesterday, and one of the men, he asked me a deep question when I was leaving. He said, "Do you think that people are more humble since the pandemic?" And that was an outstanding question. I think that in general, when people ask us questions, like it's very significant where a person's coming from, and sometimes questions can be very somewhat disrespectful because they're pressing a person, they're demanding. Questions can be demanding, and they can also be disingenuous and very dangerous by setting us up to either stick our foot in our mouth or somehow draw a penalty by either contradicting ourselves or misspeaking or just drawing concern about where we're coming from. Which concern is I step light around the word concern. Like when I hear the word concern, I think like, so you drive down the neighborhoods where I live at. You can tell what type of neighborhood you're in by the foot traffic. So like a lot of people, like you get into a working class neighborhood during the day, and people are actually at work. There's always people always in the city, but at least in some areas, like you can imagine, okay, so people have work to do, or if they're out, they have like a reason to be out, like they're going to work or they're going to the grocery store. But you get in more of a well-to-do area, and people are walking for the sake of walking because one, they have the leisure time to do that, like on a work day, they have either the type of profession or the type of situation where they can afford to walk during the day, and or patronize different things that are not critical during the day, or they just have like a different culture about just being out and about walking, and they feel safe walking, which everyone with different appearances does not have entirely the same liberty, in my experience, to be in broad society in different places as a function of appearance, because there can be different treatment, but also penalties, severe penalties, just for a certain appearance, even in the modern context. If you think about the different men of color, not only of color, but just men slain in broad daylight in broad society around the United States in different countries, that's an example of drawing severe and instant penalty and repercussions, not necessarily having done something against the law or against anyone. But so you see these different people walking during the day, and it's like some ladies, like they have some, like maybe a hat on, and they have their coat tied around their waist, and they're talking. Yeah, yeah. But then if you actually get close enough, like sometimes I've been on foot more a little bit the last few months. You get to talking, they're talking about like, oh, that old dog, we might have to fix that dog, or we might have to put that dog down, and like all the different reasons we might have to put that down, or like such and such has a family member that has this situation, and what do you think about that? And do they really? So it's like they're actually talking about very brutal things, and also potentially making a collective decision that would amount to an animal getting fixed or getting put down. And so, but they're doing it, they're very concerned the whole time. So I saw something by, I think it was Chris Hedges, where he was saying that in certain parts of the world abroad, when they see some of these agencies coming through that are ostensibly helping people, like with different like medical treatment or like social services, they see that vehicle coming and they start running for their life because they know what that's about. Is even as benign and helpful as that is on the surface, they know what it amounts to. So when I hear the word concerned, I'd near about run for my life if I had the footing and the clear way to get away from something that's concerned. I don't want anything concerned about me. But So I meant to say is that so you have so Naomi Klein has talked about so during the time of COVID, so you had is the person asked me, do you think people were humble since COVID? And I do think that things are different and people have more perspective since COVID, because one is what it means to enjoy life and liberty is appreciated now, but also failure doesn't seem quite as daunting, because like in before COVID, it's like, man, if I don't get to be a rock star, if I don't get to be a professor, if I don't get to be a doctor, the world is over. No, actually, you can go to school for all that, and while you're in school, the world can, for intensive purposes, be over or suspended temporarily, and you can figure out life from that vantage point, and then have another opportunity to exist. Now you can enjoy things and realize that yes, just because one thing doesn't work out doesn't mean that the world doesn't come to an end, because we haven't had yet a lockdown because you didn't make it to be a rock star or to be a doctor, or you're not locked down because you didn't make it to do that. I'm just being a little bit facetious with that, but during that time, as rough as it was, like for people had it different in that time, and different people have said that a lot of times you're marginal people. So like in the United States, that would be a lot of people of color historically. Whatever phase iteration of society is going through, the people who are the closest to not having means are at the experience the brunt of something. So whatever we're going through, a lot of the people without means and status are going to take the brunt of that. But during COVID, I think that was the true on the world stage. If we consider life in social economic status on a world stage, because that was a world event. And so some of us in the West, some of us, yes, lost jobs and took punishment and pain. And we also lost people in the West, maybe from deprivation and also from the sickness. But then going broad to other countries, they were losing people in, I think, vast swaths, very incomprehensible numbers of people were lost when that amount of production slowed down. But that's you could say that some of whatever brought on COVID, whatever allowed COVID to go on, some people would speak in terms of that we didn't have the full picture, or some would say that we did. But you could, in one way or another, say that it was somehow a mismanagement on the part of either Western societies or affluent societies, people having production and say so messed up somehow somewhere that amounted to that. There had to be some kind of mistakes or misdealings or dishonesty in that entire debacle, I would imagine. And so the very humble people paid for that, and we lost a lot of ourselves in that, and that's an externality. But then Nicholas Nassim Taleb would say that he would talk about the different externalities even within an affluent society in terms of the racketing and gaming of different things. But also there's externalities in what we undergo. So you go to a college, they recruit you to do a college. There's risk in going to college because you're paying that much income, you're spending that much time that you could be doing something else, enjoying something else, learning something else. And then also were you to fall out of favor with your deadlines or your professors, you could yet compromise your ability to study other things, other places. And so there's just a lot of ways to be injured in something, undertaking something like college. That's an example, or anything. There's risk with anything. I enjoy music, but I've spent a lot of resources to get closer to music resources and teachers, where I may have extended myself spending those resources. And so there's a degree of risk and expense even in studying something as simple as guitar. But I realized that I didn't necessarily need a lot or any of that, because you don't really need more than a guitar to get good at guitar. A teacher is great, but you don't need more than a guitar. But to get to that point, it took a lot of learning and mishaps and missteps and misadventures. So you could say they were leading up to that. But then with that, Arthur Avalon has said that yoga it attains difficult dangers. One example of the dangers of yoga is that if you the outspoken the teacher Osho has talked about some of your practices in yoga, and some of them are like becoming conscious of the breath, so watching yourself breathe. But some things are both conscious and unconscious, and both, and breathing is one thing that is both conscious and unconscious, and there might be different reasons to do it. There's different times where you have to hold your breath or manage your breath consciously, and there's different times when it's better unconscious, but it's actually a combination. And sometimes you may have experienced different times in your life actually become conscious of your breathing, and sometimes it's difficult to become back unconscious of it once you become conscious of it, but while intending to. Like, how do you intentionally not think about something without thinking about it more is an example. And that's one way that people can get injured with yoga going back, because you start watching your breath to such a degree that now you can't actually forget about watching your breath, and it actually makes it difficult to sleep, and now you can't sleep, and you miss enough sleep, and your heart can stop functioning. That's the danger of yoga. So we need a modesty and